Well, M-I-Z, what say you? You don't have to be a Mizzou alum to have a passionate opinion of what's happened at the University of Missouri over the past few months. Protests, resignations, threats of violence against some students, and now lawmakers making budget threats. And as the flagship school of a statewide system, will the ramifications be contained to Columbia? What comes to mind when we think Mizzou? Proud? Embarrassed? Worried? Stay tuned. Stay Tuned brings together local experts, journalists, civic leaders, and regular people to have tough conversations for a stronger St. Louis. Add your voice to our conversation, and you're at the table as we stay on top of current events and go deeper, bringing more light and less heat to the issues that matter. From the 9 network of public media in Grand Center, this is Stay Tuned. It was Mizzou's football team that pushed the university into the national spotlight last fall, not with their on-field play, but with their support of protesting students camped out on the South Quad and a grad students' hunger strike calling for the resignation of the university president. The students were protesting multiple issues, including racial divisions dating back decades, they said. The University of Missouri system president resigned, and the chancellor of the Columbia campus was demoted. But tensions remain at Mizzou. Recently, a strongly worded letter from the former president called into question the abilities of the interim president. And the only 2 African-American members of the board of curators stepped down. Enrollments are declining for the first time in years, and backlash by threat of budget cuts is coming from state lawmakers. Concerned alumni and others across the state are sounding off on social media. 2 curators resign in a week, wrote MJ. I'm suspicious. Alumni and taxpayers' demands for transparency will only grow louder. So what's going on at the state's flagship university? And could it have consequences statewide? Is Mizzou, as some lawmakers have said, embarrassing the state? Or are these the growing pains of progress? So it turns out students may be burned out when it comes to talking about some of the issues we're tackling here tonight, at least on camera. People are definitely sounding off on social media, students and otherwise. And as we do every week, we will be relying on social media, what you're saying, things you've sent us, polls you've answered, tweets throughout the show tonight. But we're also using Google Hangout to go to Columbia and to talk to a friend of the show, Gabrielle Hayes. Gabrielle, hi Gabrielle.
Hi.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Gabrielle, full disclosure, because we are proud to say, does some intern work here at the 9 Network. Also a sophomore in the journalism school?
Yes, sophomore.
And so you're on campus. When I was there last fall for KSDK reporting, we found students, it was pretty easy actually to come across students who had thoughtful answers and opinions and wanted to kind of weigh in on what was going on. Our crew was there this past week, and it was hard to find anyone willing to speak on camera. Are people still talking about this on campus in terms of all the things we've already laid out?
So, well, first of all, people are definitely still talking about it. I think in regards to not being able to get people to talk, we've definitely had some instances, and it's not even a case of outsiders, I think, but we've had moments where people have tried to tell our story or tell their story, and it's been taken out of context. And at some of our classes, we will go over how we were reflected, and sometimes like students would be referred to as rebels and things like that. So I don't think that we've stopped talking about it because it's, our campus, we live here. But I definitely think that people are a bit more timid, a bit more cautious because, we want our story told right.
Invaluable lesson. We could do a whole show on the teachable moments for young journalists and what it's like to be the subject of a story. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if we talked about things like the legislature getting involved and wanting to hold back money. I'm pretty sure when I was at Mizzou, we didn't know beans about what the state lawmakers thought of our school. Is that something students are engaged in and concerned about, or is it not even on your radar?
Well, I think that depends. Mizzou is a very big campus. We have approximately, I want to say like 37,000 students. So I think the knowledge about that really varies. As journalism students, a lot of us kind of know a little bit about it. So I think that depends.
You're more plugged in, perhaps, to the current events than the
Yeah.
average student.
Yeah.
We'll brag on the J School there. Is campus tense? What's campus like?
Again, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I feel like when I'm on campus, I wouldn't say that it's tense. I would say that conversation is happening, and everyone is trying to work together to try to figure out how we can move forward. So I think we've kind of gotten past that step, and it's more of what are we going to do now.
Well, let's back up. So what is the biggest misrepresentation that maybe the folks back home in St. Louis don't know, don't understand, that you see and understand on the ground there at Mizzou?
Well, I think when you're on the outside looking in, it's easy to forget that these are people, and that we are people, and that we live here, and that we have to wake up tomorrow and go to class. And so I wouldn't say that it's just one thing, but I think what we as students, what we would like people to understand and to remember is that we are students, and we are people, and we are affected by these things. And well, essentially, we're here because we want to learn, and we want to grow, and we want to get a job one day. And sometimes I feel like that gets lost in the shuffle because it is such a big news story, and a lot of people know about it. So I think it would be the human element, that we are people, and that we are aspiring to do big things.
You're kind of in the nexus there. I mean, you're a journalism student. This is a national. It's getting international coverage from time to time. You're an African American student. Where does that tension all play out for you?
I think it's really interesting. We have classes where we study historical events, and then I enter my sophomore year, and suddenly I am immersed in a historical event. So it is interesting. The first semester, when everything happened the way that it did, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I think sometimes it can be difficult for journalists, especially when you're in the thick of it. So I think for us, the biggest thing was it was kind of a learning experience. I think, going through this process will come out better. And I don't know, I think it'll essentially make us better, more well-rounded.
So I wasn't in the journalism school, but I knew the journalism students to be a proud group. Are you proud to be a Tiger?
Yes, of course. We love our campus. We love our school. In the journalism school, we are a very close-knit community. And so, of course, I am. I'm very proud to be a Mizzou journalism Tiger.
We look forward to having you contribute here in the future, and we look forward to following your career. Thanks for your time, Gabrielle.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. We also, while we were on campus, though, we did get an interview with one of the founding members of Concerned Student 1950. That's the organization that was leading the protests last fall. Maxwell Little, one of the founding members. Here's a little sample of what he had to say.
It's important to be concerned about issues, whether or not it's about gender, whether it's not about race, whether it's not about politics. It's important to get involved in the way your higher education institution functions, because at the end of the day, it affects you. Last year, during the protests at 10 City, we had numerous support from students who were concerned about the marginalization and the treatment of students from diverse backgrounds on this campus. As you can see yesterday at the Board of Curators meeting, you saw some new faces out there. So yeah, it's a growing body. It's a growing body movement. There's always going to be blowback against an oppressed group who's decided to mobilize and resist against an oppressive system. Okay, let me welcome three guests to the table to kind of tackle all of what we've set up here so far.
First is Stephen Bradley. Welcome back to the show. Director of African American Studies at St. Louis University, for that kind of, you're going to give us that outside looking in perspective from just a couple hours away. Longtime involved Mizzou alum, former president of the Mizzou Alumni Association, Dudley McCarter. Thanks, Dudley, for being here.
Bill McClellan does that, so I thought I could do it.
We're going to get you an autograph before we leave before you leave the building, I promise. And then Karan Otto, reporter, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, covers higher education and really have been covering extensively the goings-on at Mizzou. So maybe just first, because we were talking, you also covered things in Ferguson. So I know this story at Mizzou is larger than the protest, but it was interesting to me, having covered Ferguson and then covered for KSTK the events at Columbia. I felt like Mizzou was much less tense overall, but then the reaction from people outside seemed to be just as intense, if not more so. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, certainly the situation in Mizzou was a lot less tense than it was in Ferguson. As far as people's reactions, I just think it has to do with the love people have for Mizzou, and it's an institution that's very important to the state, and people see it as being wounded. And I guess, from walking around campus and talking to students, that's the real sticking point for them, because, it's like, well, we spoke out, and so now the university is wounded, it's lesser, and there's this attitude that, okay, so you talk about, if we talk about racism or if we talk about inequality, we're being divisive. Well, no, racism is divisive. Inequality is divisive, not just talking about it. So it's like we spoke up, and now people don't like the university anymore. So yeah, it's very tense on both sides.
Give us, Dudley, the sense from alums, because I know you're still very involved.
Well, Casey, last fall was a painful and difficult time. Many alums were frustrated. And I kind of draw a parallel to the 60s, and I'm a student of the 60s, and I was on the college campus when the Vietnam War protests took place. And I'm sure the alums of colleges and universities all across the country were very upset to see protesting on, their campus. But I'm proud to say I'm a Mizzou graduate. We've been educating students for 176 years. We've been doing
Today,
it.
I believe, is the anniversary, actually.
Yes, you're exactly right. And we're starting our 177th year, the oldest public university west of the Mississippi. So we've got a lot to be proud of, and the events of last fall were painful, but my hope is that alums move past that. And
when you say painful because of the issues that were brought to light, or painful because of how they were handled?
Probably for a variety of reasons. The alums I've talked to are tired of seeing Mizzou in the national spotlight in a negative sense. Some were unhappy with all the turmoil on campus. There's a wide range of views about how it was perceived by alums and why it was painful to different people. But largely it was just the institution many of us love being put in such a negative light that caused so much pain for alums. I was thinking as I was coming over here, though, just 2 years ago, Mizzou was a model of inclusion for the nation. When Michael Sam was threatened with protests, the student body circled the campus to keep those protesters away from Michael Sam.
This is the football player who had come out to his team and then was drafted by the Rams as the first openly gay football player.
Absolutely. And Mizzou was praised throughout the country for the way that our student body handled that and showed respect for Michael Sam and protected him. And here, a short time later, we're now getting all this negative publicity from these events. So it hurts alums because we love the university, and you don't like to see anyone you love or any entity you love, go through this. So it has been painful, but I'm hopeful that we move on, and I'm confident we will.
Here are a couple of tweets that I think kind of show the spectrum of reaction. We've got one, this is from the Concerned Student in 1950, that this past week I believe they were given an image award. They're thanking the NAACP. It means so much to be recognized. The fight isn't over, the movement continues. And then you've got another gentleman named Martin talking about how Melissa Click, obviously the professor who's been in the news a lot, calling for muscle to get student journalists away from protesting students, is Melissa Click and the spoiled concerned student 1950 kids should get mandatory classes in respect and good manners. That's a wide range of reaction. Are things, Dudley mentioned the 1960s. Are there parallels? Is this totally different? Give us the outsider's perspective.
Well, I think, firstly, I would say I'm an alumnus of Mizzou as well. And so I care very much for the institution, and some of the best memories of my life took place in Columbia. I think there are some parallels. I think one of the things we forget is things happen in context and in moments. So in the 1960s, he mentioned the Vietnam War, but you also got to remember that this was a high time for the civil rights and Black Power movement, and so this meant something to students who were able to attend colleges and universities. At this moment, I'd say in 1969, you know, with the zeitgeist being what it was, some scholars call it the apex of Black student activism. At this moment, with the Black Lives Matter movement ongoing, this is all part of what happens on these campuses. So 76 campuses have a list of demands concerning how they feel institutions are treating them and how they feel on campus. I think it's an important thing to remember that for as uncomfortable as people outside of the university are, you can only imagine the discomfort for some of these African American students on campus. And I think that that's important because what we're speaking to, he had mentioned Michael Sams. We value that particular Black body quite a bit in terms of making money for the university and tackling people and that sort of thing. But how much do we value Black bodies that aren't tackling anybody or dunking a ball or things like that? And I think that this is the point that some of these students are trying to make.
One point along those lines that I want to bring in, Shine Big is a tool, a multimedia tool we use to bring in reaction from the community. Let's hear from one gentleman who sent us a video.
An important takeaway from the lessons here last fall for those of us who experienced the substantial progress in the 1960s civil rights movement is to realize the work's not finished.
So that was Roger Gaffigan. As you could tell, he was standing on the north quad of Jesse Hall. But let's bring it back to now. We've got the state legislature making threats. The governor, I believe, telling your paper that he thinks they're just threats. But this is state lawmakers getting involved. They're not happy with what they have seen. Are those real? Are those threats substantial?
Well, I mean, I think it's always substantial anytime you have people in power that are threatening a university. But at the same time, it's not unique. You know, you go to states all over, you go anywhere in the country, and you have legislators who are trying to get involved in university business, and it's up to the university. What are they going to do? I mean, it's an academic institution. I mean, you're supposed to have this free flowing of ideas. You're going to have things that are controversial that happen on a campus, and are you going to stand up for yourself, or are you going to bow down because they control the purse strings? And so I think right now the administration at Mizzou is very upset and very worried about what's going to happen. But really, I mean, this is the flagship university, the premier public university in this state. I mean, Mizzou has some power, it has some clout, and a lot of people on campus are wondering, when is the administration going to stand up to the legislature?
You worried?
I am worried. I hope and I pray that these are threats that do not become a reality. I hope the Missouri legislature realizes that if funding is cut, that just hurts current Missouri students, it hurts future Missouri students, hurts Missouri families, it'll hurt the economy of the state of Missouri. It'll be an invitation to the best and brightest students in our state to leave if our state legislature cuts funding. So I'm very worried, and I hope the legislature doesn't do it. I think it would be wrong. It would hurt the university, it would hurt the state, and it would hurt everybody in Missouri.
Yeah, because you see the Mizzou extension sign, and then you have actual campuses across the state that, as you said, acts as an economic driver to some degree in terms of research dollars and things that come into the state.
The University of Missouri system is the second largest employer in the state of Missouri. And if the funding is cut to Mizzou, that'll affect the entire University of Missouri system. People will lose their jobs. Scholarships will be reduced. 3 out of 5 students that go to Mizzou get financial aid right now. If funding is cut, that financial aid is going to drop dramatically. Say there'll be a loss of research revenue coming into the state. The ripple effect of this would go out for years. And as I think you know, Casey, Mizzou is one of 32 public universities in the American Association of Research Universities, the AAU. There's 64 universities total. Mizzou is one of 32. And if our funding is cut, I have a fear that we will lose our membership in that premier body that is so important for University of Missouri to attract top students and top faculty. So I'm very worried, and I hope these threats don't become a reality.
A distinction, if I'm not mistaken, that made us stand out when we joined the SEC, for instance, in terms of our academic credentials.
Yes, that's one of the reasons we were invited to the SEC. We are one of 4 universities in the SEC that is a member of the AAU. And the Big Ten had every member in the AAU except University of Nebraska that lost its membership about 5 years ago.
Let me show us a graphic here that just kind of says just a little bit about how things have changed as well when it comes to funding. So this is 1990 versus 2016. Does that worry you in and of itself? If you can see, you've got 70% coming from the state 25, 26 years ago, and and that pie is changing there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be very tough to hinge the loss of funding to Mizzou on the students who are drawing attention to serious issues of diversity at the university and the system itself. I think from the graphic that we just looked at, it's been in the works
this is
to
a trend.
defund this flagship university. And to be fair, it's not just Missouri. This is happening all over the nation. And so I think that's a tough thing to do. It might seem convenient at this point to blame the loud students.
What about enrollment? Enrollment's down, or projected to be down. Is that a concern?
Well, it's always a concern when enrollment's down or when you think it's going to be down. I mean, at this point, they don't know.
But for the first time in years, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, is it because of the events of last fall, or I mean, like we discussed,
it's the demographics.
For
right?
demographics, absolutely. You have fewer students in the pipeline, fewer high school students who are 18 and college ready at this point. It's kind of leveled off throughout Missouri, throughout the entire Midwest. So, I mean, this is something that people could see coming.
That's true. This is the smallest graduating class of high school seniors in 10 years.
Let me show you. This is the last thing I'll make you look at here, I promise. And then I want to get your reaction, Dudley. So a Twitter poll. Do you think Mizzou is headed in the right direction? This is not scientific, but we had people weigh in, and I think anecdotally it is fairly representative of what a lot of people I've talked to say. 62% say they do not. Where are we headed? What's next, and how long might this take to change in the minds of those who think it's not right?
Well, it'll take time, and there's some healing that has to go on. I'm not totally surprised by those statistics. I think the people that have a negative view are more likely to respond to that. I think you, as an academician and as a journalist, you could verify this. I think the people that have a negative view are more likely to express that than those that have a positive view. But we've got some bumps in the road. We've got to rebuild trust with the legislature. We've got to rebuild trust with alums. We've got to rebuild trust with students, incoming students. So we've got our work to do. But I'm committed to helping Mizzou. I know the leadership down there is committed to moving forward and keeping the good things going. And we've got a lot of good things going at Mizzou, but it's been drowned out with all the noise about the bad things.
Is it drowning it out, or are these conversations that had to be had?
Yeah, I think that's an important part of the conversation, and which is we talk about the pain and this sort of thing. It hurts growing up. It hurts progressing. That's if you were to get in terms of the U.S. military, when they polled the United States, most people didn't want to desegregate the U.S. military, but it was something that needed to be done. In terms of Mizzou, this conversation needs to be had at this moment, and it's tough and it's uncomfortable, but it's something that needs to be had. Now, probably the all-time most uncomfortable person is Middleton, the president,
the interim,
the interim president, and so. Let's hope that he's able to get through these conversations, but let's be clear about the fact that institutions don't change naturally, that institutions have to be nudged, and that's the way it was in the 60s, that's the way it was with regard to apartheid in the 1980s. Institutions have to be nudged along these lines.
Time is slipping away. We have just under a minute left, but should we make anything of the only two, I believe, African-American Board of Curator members resigning? This is now an all-white group of only 6 out of 9 positions that are filled.
Yeah, I mean, especially at a time like this, you know, it certainly doesn't look good for the university. I mean, I don't think we can point to anything and say that they resigned because of last fall. I mean, very different circumstances, but it certainly doesn't look good.
Well, my hope is that the governor nominates 3 more curators and that the Senate confirms them. I think this is such an important body that it should be acting with a full complement of members and not 6. And yes, I certainly hope African Americans are appointed to the Board of Curators because we need to have their voice and their representation.
Are you confident in about 15 seconds that will you have a different outlook maybe this time next year? Do you think progress could be made that fast on however your person's perspective?
I see the glass as half full, and we are going to be in a better place.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. And until next week, stay tuned.